as we reflect on the gospel reading that we have heard today, it is necessary, I think, that we pause and truly consider what we hear. Because the story and the setting, the culture and the language, they are all very distant from us. But the core reality of the story, this is immediate. This we understand. We have, on the one hand, the Lord, surrounded by His disciples and all those following Him. The horror of the passion, of the cross, is hidden from them. They are not thinking about death. They are rejoicing in the presence of the Lord and the Master of life. They have seen healings. They are hearing preachings. They are considering that this may be the Messiah. In their minds, the entire world is wide open to them. Anything can happen. They are a joyful, a happy, an excited crowd. And as they are going, they come into the city. It's a small city. I don't even know if the archaeologists have found it. So they walk up to the gates through the countryside. The birds are singing, the flowers are blooming, and out of the gates there comes a crowd, a procession, and they are not happy. They are not singing. They are carrying the body of a young man who has died. We don't know why. Maybe he was murdered. Maybe he fell sick. Maybe he simply fell. In some way, a young man died before his time. We don't know if he's married, if he has children, although none of these things are mentioned. We know his mother is there. His father is not, so he must have already died. And the mother, she has no other child. This is her only son, the only fruit of her body, the only support of her old age, her only family. And he has died. We can imagine her face, white, set in that grim look of those who have lost far more than they can comprehend, struggling to simply put one foot in front of the other. We can imagine the crowd. Those who know her, they are seeking to care for her. And every voice has a different piece of advice. You need to cry, don't cry. You need to weep, don't weep. You need to show some emotion, hold it all in or you'll lose control. Put your hand on the beer. No, don't. Step back. It's too much. Every voice is trying to help. But no one can help. Her son is dead. And these two groups meet. And we can imagine there will be an awkward silence, some shuffling of feet. Who will come through the gate first? Probably the funeral procession should come first. So we expect the Lord and the apostles and all the crowd to step aside to make a way. A crowd of human joy making a passage for uttermost grief to pass through. And as the casket passes, as the mother, now unable to hold it in, given over to sobbing, as she walks by, the Lord steps up. He puts his hand on her shoulder. He says, "Don't cry." More useless advice, she thinks. I don't need this, she thinks. But maybe there's something in his eyes, because he turns to the bier. He puts his hand on the casket. He says, "Young man, get up." And we can think, for a moment, her heart must be full of anger. How dare he mock? And yet her heart must be full of impossible hope. And then her son sits up and climbs down from the bier. And it will not be quiet. There will be gasps, there will be shouts, there will be amazement, there will be awe. But to the mother and the son, it will seem as though all the world has dropped away. And I do not think it says anything more. It says one thing. It says, "And the Lord gave the son to the mother." And then he stepped back. The work was done. There's something striking about this miracle. Every other time that we see someone healed, that we see someone raised from the dead, there is always a request. They always go to Christ and they ask him, "Lord, if you can, Lord, please, Lord, you're the only one who can help. Heal my son. Heal my daughter. Give them back to me." But this mother does not say anything. And yet the Lord, he hears the cry of her heart. He hears the anguish. He hears her repeating in her mind, even under her breath, "Why? God, why?" And beyond the why, "Please." And he answers. Now, what lesson are we to take from this? There are 2 points. First, lest we ever think that death is a good thing. Christ sees death and he hates it. He demands, he insists that life conquer. This is the meaning of the cross. Christ submits to death in order to destroy it. This we know. But it is good to be reminded. The other lesson. The question, why do we not see such things ourselves? Why is our loss not greeted by a miracle? This is a harder question. This is the question that brings us to tears. If her son could be given back, why not mine? Why not my father, my mother, my sister, my brother, my son, my daughter? Why must we suffer these things in this life of brokenness and death? There is one answer. When we live our lives like the apostles in that crowd, going into the city before the miracle, full of joy, full of hope, full of confidence and excitement. That is, strangely, when we see God the least. Think about it. When our lives are full, when work is not too difficult, and the refrigerator is full of good food, and we have time to cook it, and family gathered around with us to play games or watch television or go for walks, there is so little time, so little need to pray. How many of us remember? How many of us find ourselves able to turn our hearts to God? All these blessings are blessings indeed. And yet, when they fill our eyes and our minds and our hearts, there is no room for God. This is our human story. This is our struggle. This is our common sin. We take the blessings that God gives to us, and they are His blessings indeed, but we take them, and having received them, we have no room left for Him. And sometimes, as those things are taken away from us, as we lose that peace, that joy, that hope, that expectation that life will be a bed of roses in some sense, we have the opportunity again. Room is made for us to reach out and to receive the gifts that God gives to us. And when He gives Himself to us, it does not fill our hearts and make no room for others. It gives us the strength to love better, to hope more perfectly, to experience even greater joy. If we receive the blessings of God first, then we can comprehend all the other blessings that He gives to us. And yet we know that this fulfillment will not come to us in this life. This is our hope as Christians. We are born, we live lives of joy, of hope, of love, of plenty, and then we grow old, and all that we rejoiced in begins to fall and fade away. But when we put our hope in God, we know that what we lose will be given back to us again. We understand that when we learn to abandon everything we love in our heart of hearts and give our heart to God, He will give our heart back to us. He will give our loved ones back to us. He will give the world back to us. But resurrection can only come after death. This is what the mother found. She lost everything, and she encountered Christ. And Christ gave her Himself and everything she had lost once again. And for us, we struggle to hold on to what we have. But when we can learn to lose it, to look to God for grace and love and strength, then the promise is certain. He will give us Himself, and all that we have lost will be returned. If not now, then in the resurrection. The struggle to learn how to do this is our entire life. But today, may we set aside the things of this world, the cares of our lives, and turn our hearts to God as we approach Holy Communion. Please stand, and we will continue the liturgy.